Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Brianna Approved Podcast. I am beyond excited for our guest today. We have Dr. Tina Yang, who is a fourth generation Chinese medicine doctor, a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, a fellow of the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine, and a certified Reiki master. What many people might not know is that Dr. Tina Yang was my acupuncturist when I was living in California, who helped me with some stuff regarding my hormones and my menstrual cycle, and also was one of the people who got me into learning more about Chinese medicine, your emotions with organs that I talk about all the times, herbs, so on and so forth. So Dr. Tina, thank you for coming on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me as a guest. And it's so great to reconnect with you. And just, listening to your podcast over the last year has been really fun. And I'm just so excited to be a part of it today.
Yeah, I feel the same about you. I mean, you are one of the most bright people that I've ever met. I mean, I think your knowledge and your passion is so amazing. And I know, from when I was working with you, which was I think about maybe 5 years ago, I think you really honed in on this fertility specialist. And I know you've gotten a lot of other certifications in that, and you have a couple other of your locations in Irvine, California. And so can you kind of just tell people a little bit about how you've kind of evolved even with your acupuncturist and your herbalism career, and kind of how you got maybe
Sure.
specialized in that?
Yes, I would love to. So I've been practicing now, gosh, it's almost been 20 years, which the time has completely flown by so quickly. I can't even believe it's been that much time. But when I first started out, as all acupuncturists, you start off usually treating pain. That seems to be the most common reason why people come for acupuncture. But then as I got into my practice the first year, I started having the opportunity to work with more women and in the capacity of fertility, different, ailments during pregnancy. And I myself was a young mom at the time. So I just became super excited and passionate about helping women, either start or grow their family and helping them through all the different phases of motherhood, including postpartum care and getting them prepared for the next pregnancy. So, I've been practicing for a while now. So a lot of my patients are on child number 2, 3, or 4 sometimes. So, but that's kind of how it all started. And I would say that probably about more than 80% of my practice now is women's health and fertility. So it continues to be my practice passion. And I just love it so much that, again, time flies by when you love what you're doing.
I love that.
So yeah, so I have a partner, Dr. Tang, who's also a naturopathic doctor and an acupuncturist. So we had met when we were at the University of California, Irvine at the Susan Samuele Center for Integrative Medicine. So we were like the first acupuncturists hired to launch their integrative center offsite. And we also started off their herbal dispensary. And Dr. Tang, my partner, actually launched the naturopathic medicine side of things. So jumped through a lot of hoops through the medical board and all that fun stuff that you have to go through when something's super new. And that's kind of how we met. And we were both young moms, and we decided to join forces to help each other out, cover each other's maternity leaves. And that's kind of how it started. And we created Coastal Acupuncture and Natural Health Center. So that's been around now for, gosh, probably about 13 years. And from that, we launched our sister company, Awakened Health, which I think I had mentioned it to you when we reconnected. It's our online custom herbal formulation website, but we are also planning to hopefully launch some education programs through there as well
Yes,
eventually. But
yes.
as of right now, it's all of our Chinese herbal formulas that we've created over the last 20 years. Just a
Yes.
lot of trial and error, what's working, what's more common. So a lot of formulas around women's health. We have an immune defense formula that's being used quite a bit for the prevention of cold and flus, and just to help strengthen our immune system during this wonderful COVID time that we're in right now. So
Crazy
yeah,
world
so
we're
it's
living in. Yeah, I believe when I
yeah,
worked
and
with you, the tincture was called, I think, period promoter was the title of the
oh my
tincture at the
gosh, that's
time.
right.
So one of the original
Yes.
tinctures. But yeah, I would love to talk to you a
Hmm.
little bit about. I don't think many people know. I haven't really shared this story, but when I had met you at the time, I was like I said, maybe 5, 6 years ago or whatever it was. And I obviously wasn't looking to get pregnant at the time. What had happened was I went through a really stressful time. Went through, like a breakup. I moved across the country. I started a new job. There was just like a lot of compounded stress. But by the time I had met you, I had lost my period for about 6 months. And I didn't actually feel stressed by the time I had gotten to California, but I was really confused because, I was doing all the right things and holistic health and all the Brianna approved things and whatnot. But I think I would love to hear your opinion on this idea of, even if you don't think you want kids or you're not in a stage in your life right now where that's even on your radar, the idea of having healthy ovulation, prepping your body for healthy fertility eventually in the future, that, it's still important to have healthy hormones and a healthy cycle. So can you talk about just some of the main things that maybe you see come up where people are having problems or areas they can be focusing more
Yes,
on, or, just dropping your fertility
yes,
knowledge?
absolutely. And, I think one of the things in our society, in our community, is we tend to kind of be very ambitious folks, right? So we're running at a pretty full speed with our careers and education, maybe post graduate work that we're doing, families. So we're kind of like burning the candle at two ends. That's kind of our culture. And what I've noticed for a lot of women, whether they're trying to get pregnant or not, even if they're like yourself, if they're just trying to balance out their cycle, balance out their hormones, and just kind of learn a little bit more about like what is my cycle like? When am I going to PMS? When am I going to possibly ovulate? And whether you're trying or not trying to get pregnant, it's good to know as a woman, right? To understand your cycle. But what I have noticed is, because we are a community that tends to run our adrenals out. And I know you're an expert on stress and adrenal function and
What an
adrenal
expert.
health. So I think you would appreciate this very much that, we tend to tap out our adrenals. So because our hormones all come from the same base, pregnenolone, our body's going to prioritize, right? It's going to always prioritize the fight or flight mode first. Sort of like back in the days, for cavemen, they're running for their lives, they're running away from large animals and, trying to survive. I mean, for us, obviously, in a modern society, we don't have those challenges of, running for our lives, but we still have that fight or flight response that gets triggered in us. And it's really hard to downregulate that and turn that off. So when that happens over periods of time, long periods of time, our body tends to drain the adrenal function, our cortisol, our body needs more cortisol to survive, and adrenaline. So what's going to happen is our pregnenolone is going to, we call it the pregnenolone steal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to take from the reproductive hormones, from the thyroid hormones, and it's going to shunt over into the stress hormones, because it's going to say, Brianna, Tina, you guys need to survive life. So
Yeah.
we are going to just take away from our reproductive hormones and we're going to give it all to the adrenals so that you can survive your day-to-day life. So I see that happen a lot. So for my patients that are struggling with fertility or struggling with irregular cycles, I always test their adrenals to kind of see if they're leveled off, if there's any kind of deficiency, or adrenal insufficiency, or total fatigue, and whether we need to support them with herbs or supplements or not, to make sure their adrenal function is optimal so that it won't tap out the other hormones. So I'm sure you see that quite a bit too.
Hey, y'all. I am so excited to announce my 6-week Health Refresh program. This is perfect for anybody who is looking to work with me in a more affordable way in a group setting. So, as you know, I really believe that health is a team effort, which is why I actually wanted to make this a group program, because during our 6 weeks together, we're going to be having live Zoom calls every single week, which we will go over different health topics. We're going to go over what themes we see in the actual group together. Everybody's going to have one individual session with me and then a follow-up 30-minute session. Everybody's going to be getting an individual supplement herbal protocol. They will have access to a Facebook group that is private and exclusive to members in this group. You will have text, email support from me, and then you will also receive 10% discount on Brianna approved supplements. So if you are looking to transform your confidence and your relationship around nutrition, health, supplements, or just looking to level up your overall knowledge around these areas, then this is going to be the program for you. Absolutely.
planner.
I'm sure you probably see it bucketed like into certain patterns with people where it's, the type A person. And like you said, they're kind
Yes.
of go, go, go. And that's great for
Mhm.
your career and things like that, but not always for your health. And so, what would you say to somebody who's maybe new to acupuncture and they're maybe either having irregular cycles, they're trying to become pregnant, maybe they're just dealing with really bad PMS. I tell people all the time, like, listen, you shouldn't want to like murder everyone around you for 2 weeks out of the month. Like to have a day or two where you're super, sad or, feel not like yourself, like that's normal, right? But there's a sliding scale with everything. So what would you say to somebody who's coming to you or they're new to acupuncture? Like, what is this journey going to look like for me? How long do I have to do this? Like, what other factors do I need to take into consideration? Like, what's my acupuncture journey look like?
Yes, that's a really good question. And I think it's kind of more a lifestyle adjustment, right? So it's not just acupuncture and herbs and supplements, but I think it's sort of a mindset too,
Yes.
and really setting patients' expectations. Well, first, we always want to meet you where you're at, and one of
Yeah.
the questions on our questionnaire is how much change are you willing to make, right, for treating this particular condition that you're coming in for. So that's number one. And based on that question, I can kind of gauge where patients at. Then I'll even ask them, what is your treatment goals? What would you like to achieve, or some of the health benefits you want to receive? But generally speaking, if a patient is pretty stressed out, real high strung, I think they will notice the benefits of acupuncture pretty quickly. So usually even after the first treatment, acupuncture does a great job at down-regulating the nervous system, reducing the cortisol levels in your body. I mean, it just helps with sleep. It can help, with elevating your mood, just with the neurochemical release that occurs during treatment, and it continues even beyond the treatment, generally for hours to days for some patients. So everybody experiences it a little bit differently. But I feel like acupuncture is probably one of the quickest treatments where you actually can see results. And after that, most patients are like, wow, okay, I slept really well. I feel less anxious. And then most of the time, they're pretty sold on the treatment. And then from
Yeah.
there, we could talk about, okay, well, let's try some lifestyle changes,
Yeah.
and maybe let's try some herbs to see if we can, further your progress along. So that's
Yeah.
kind of usually the approach I take, and just really kind of checking in to see, reevaluating a patient's treatment plan, making adjustments accordingly, because things do change for people. Perhaps there's an added stress that's come in unexpectedly in their life. So, we definitely want to make adjustments accordingly.
Yeah. That's
But
what I
most
loved
patients, by
working
the
with
time they,
you.
Mhm.
No, that's why I absolutely loved working with you because I joke when I talk about you. I'm like, no, Tina was like my therapist out there because it is so important. Whether you're working with a practitioner as a nutritionist, an herbalist, an acupuncturist, whatever it is, there should be check-ins because your body hopefully should be adjusting. And if it's not adjusting, then that also would suggest that you should be making check-ins as well. And to your point, I mean, acupuncture is one of the things that I always just like lean into it, look into it, add it into your protocol if you can. And even things like fire cupping. I mean, that was one of the things too that was just so, I think, helpful for me. And to your point earlier, it's this idea I think about just like doing less sometimes. And I think sometimes the physiology has a delayed reaction to the mind and kind of they're not always on the same page. And I think that's where the acupuncture part, has been really helpful. And to your point, like you are really great at, I think, educating people on the why of things. And I know when I used to lay on the table with getting my sessions with you, I would ask a lot of questions about emotions associated with certain organs. And I would love to hear you do a little synopsis of that, maybe for somebody who hasn't heard about this concept or kind of this idea of maybe some emotions and organ kind of chi deficiencies or whatever yin yang that you kind of see in
Sure.
patterns of people
Yeah.
with fertility or menstrual issues.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up because I love talking TCM style.
Me too.
But
Me too.
generally, when I'm a guest on, of just giving talks, it's generally much more Western medicine based. But
Yeah.
if you guys don't mind me kind of, tapping into Chinese medicine lingo,
Tap
I'm
in
happy to do
all
that.
you want. Yeah.
Okay, I'm happy to do so. So in Chinese medicine, we have 12 major organ systems, and every organ has its own emotion associated with it. So the main organ systems are what we call the yin organs, which are the organs that have like the primary functions for our bodies include like the heart, the spleen, the lungs, the kidneys, the liver. Those are some of the main organs. And there's also, the yang paired organs with them as well, which are also connected. I'll explain that a little bit more in a second. So, for example, the lungs is the organ in Chinese medicine that governs grief and sadness. So oftentimes if you've lost a loved one, for example, you can feel that heaviness in your chest, right? Perhaps you might wake up between 3 and 5 a.m., which is the lung time according to the Chinese medicine clock. You might develop a lingering cough that you can't get rid of, for example. So the lung is one organ that's really, really involved in like depression and sadness. The heart organ is the organ that governs joy and love. So that's also involved in maybe like relationship heartbreak.
Oh, wait, it cut out. Oh, hello.
Hi,
Uh,
Brianna. Are you
Hi.
still there?
Yep. We were talking about the heart, heartbreak,
Okay,
heart,
great. I
heavy on
wasn't
my
sure where I
heart.
got cut off.
Yeah.
Okay, so the heart organ in Chinese medicine is really involved with joy, with love. When it's out of balance, there definitely could be a lack of joy, maybe some fear that's kind of interfering with the joy in your life. So, and we say with reproductive medicine, in TCM, we always talk about how there is a direct connection between the heart organ and the uterus, right? So if the heart is closed, then the uterus is going to be closed. So it's so important for women that are trying to conceive to bring joy back into their life. I think when you've been trying for a while, it really drains you and it really just sucks all the joy out of you because you're so, you're so consumed with trying to conceive. So I always tell my patients an open heart means an open uterus.
Oh,
So
I
let's
love
go out,
that.
you know, go do something fun for yourself. Go on a hike, go take a trip, reconnect with music or art or whatever that in the past has filled you with joy. So that's really important, I think, when really with any kind of health ailment, but for fertility specifically, that's a conversation I have with my patients quite often.
Yeah.
So the spleen
My
is
fave.
the organ system. The spleen, yes. Yes, you know a lot about the spleen. So the spleen is the organ that is in charge of our digestion. So it takes the food that we ingest and it transforms and transports it to the various areas of our body that needs nourishment. And then whatever's not used in nourishing the body and the functions of the body is then excreted out for elimination. So the spleen plays a very important role because it is the producer of qi and blood in our body, according to Chinese medicine. So the spleen tends to get off balance quite easily. And from an emotional standpoint, the spleen is in charge of regulating worry and pensiveness. So like the student, like yourself, someone that's in a really heavy duty doctorate program tends to have issues with their spleen. Our spleen gets thrown off balance really easily. So, and we might crave, when we're under stress like that, when we're really worrying about exams and papers and dissertations, we might crave sugar and sweets and carbohydrates, which all will inhibit the function of the spleen. So then we might have, certain symptoms like a little bit of fatigue, maybe foggy brain, a heavy sensation in the body. And when that's not regulated, well, or, treated or recognized, it can lead to, unfortunately, other conditions that are a little bit more chronic. But some of the spleen symptoms that show up pretty frequently for patients is constipation or the opposite, which can be loose stool. That's one indication like, ooh, my spleen is off.
Yeah.
So, and then the liver, of course, is our general of qi. So the liver makes sure that everything is organized and that we get things done. So I think I can say pretty confidently, Brianna, that you and I are kind of liver types. We like to get things done. We're very efficient and orderly, but the liver gets tired too. So the liver can kind of get overworked and it can create a condition called liver qi stagnation. So when the liver qi stagnates, it stagnates the energy in our body from flowing freely in the channels and meridians. And when the chi stagnates, blood stagnates too. And so that can lead to things like pain, tension, maybe stress in our upper body, shoulders. Therefore, fire cupping is very great for things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, if those blockages or stagnations aren't addressed, we can have more complicated conditions as well, whether it be, related to women's health or digestive issues or autoimmune conditions too.
Absolutely. I mean, I know you obviously are the queen of all things Chinese medicine, but a lot in Chinese medicine is about excess and deficiency, right? And kind of seeing where they fall on the spectrum. And so many times I've seen with my clients over the years, especially when it comes to women's hormone health, or if I see a lot of allergy stuff going on, a lot of even, immune stuff, because your liver does play a role in your immune health. There's usually liver excess going on or liver deficiency where, it's not, your liver's not doing what it needs to do to break down hormones in particular and go through the different phases of detoxification. So I would say like 80+% of cases that I have, there's always a liver component, not just from the, anatomical component, but the emotional side, right? Like anger and
Absolutely.
emotional detox and all of that.
Right,
But
right.
you were also one of the first people to introduce to me this idea of, your chakras that were associated as well with what was going on with menstruation. And I would love to hear you explain that to people, because I remember you being like, well, yeah, your second chakra is a little closed off right now, and we got to do that. And you're doing some like Reiki healing on me. And so maybe you could explain some connections with what's going on with maybe some chakra imbalances that you see, or what
Sure.
even that
Yeah,
means for some people who want to go
absolutely.
down that path a little more.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. But before we go down that path, I just wanted to mention with the liver chi stagnation component, generally when we have PMS, that's like all about liver chi stagnation. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
So that, some of that irritability, maybe that moodiness and the cramping, that is like typical liver chi stagnation.
Are there
So,
some
but anyways,
herbs
in
that
terms
you
of
love for liver stuff, or some maybe warming foods, or, anything that you would say to somebody who's like, yeah, I'm a liver person. I got some liver things going on, and our liver can always use a little extra help. Maybe what are some of your
sure.
go-to favorites for herbal or liver support?
Yeah, some of my go-to favorites would definitely be blue plurium or chai hu. That's probably one of the number one liver cheese stagnation herbs or to treat liver cheese stagnation. A very common formula, it's a classic Chinese herbal formula. It's called Xiao Yao San. It is translated as free and easy wanderer. It's supposed
Oh,
to relax you so much that you feel free and easy. But in that formula, it actually has herbs to calm the liver and to regulate the liver, but also to nourish blood at the same time. So it is actually the number one formula used in Asia for PMS and
wow.
premenstrual issues.
Wow.
Yeah, so we actually took that classic formula and created our PMS free based on that formula, and we just added more herbs for stress and anxiety.
Love it.
So yeah, and then in terms of your diet, I mean, I would definitely say, sticking to like warm, nourishing foods, avoiding cold foods during that time because
Yeah.
that can cause more stagnation and blockage,
Yeah.
and then lead to more cramping and pain and discomfort when your period actually starts.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Love
but
that.
going back to the chakras and balancing our chakras, I definitely love combining Ayurvedic medicine with Chinese medicine. Such a great complement. And I don't know if you all know, but there are 7 major chakra centers in our body. And similar to acupuncture and Chinese medicine, each chakra is a energy center or like a vortex of energy. And not only does each chakra have a physical component to it, but it also has an energetic component to it as well.
Yeah.
So some of the common chakras you may have heard of are like your throat chakra. So one of the indicators for throat, which would be like thyroid issues or goiter. Heart chakra, people talk about my heart chakra is blocked.
Hmm.
That's really common. And that, can be because of a variety of things. On an emotional level, it's usually like something that's either like grief or sadness or maybe a relationship breakup, just like heartache,
Yeah.
disappointment. Like if you're a person that maybe is trying to conceive and you just had a miscarriage, like that's going to be heart blockage, heart chakra blockage for sure.
Yeah.
And then I guess I should just go from the top. There's the crown
Yeah.
chakra, which is for higher intuition, the third eye, which is also it's intuition, but it also involves like creativity, like artists, you want to keep that
Mm,
third eye open as much as you can to help you create. Whether you're a writer, an artist, a musician, like this is a really important chakra for you. The throat chakra, like I mentioned earlier, is about thyroid health and being able to speak your truth. So oftentimes
yes.
when we are struggling with speaking our truth, our throat chakra can get blocked. Heart chakra again is about love, relationships. The solar plexus is the chakra that's involved in digestion, but it also is the chakra that helps you digest life. Like, how are you digesting your life? Are
Yeah.
you having troubles digesting the change that's occurring? So you might have some upper GI discomfort when you're stressed, things like
Mm-hmm.
that, or if you get into an argument with somebody you love. So the solar plexus is involved in that. The sacral chakra or second chakra is the chakra that's involved with relationships, sexuality, reproduction, and also finances too.
Right.
Any worries about finance is going to affect your second chakra too. And then your root chakra also deals with reproduction, but it is from a mental emotional aspect. It's really about the root chakra is kind of like the root and essence of who you are,
Yeah.
right? Like we say in Chinese medicine, it's your dan tian, it's your vital essence. So it's really important for us to keep that root chakra open, unblocked and balanced because it can get out of balance easily if we're struggling through some challenging times in life. So yeah, so those are the chakras.
I love that. You were, again, one of the first people I remember I was doing it was an acupuncture and Reiki session combined together. And I kept going like during the session. And you were like, your throat chakra is blocked. And you were explaining it's this idea of not speaking your mind. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I am loud and very pitta and fiery and I speak my mind. But you were like, no, it's not just about being like vocally loud. It's about like speaking your truth basically. And you were like, where in your life kind of aren't you actually like standing your ground and speaking your truth? And then at the same time, for work at that time, I was traveling so much for work. And so I was quite literally ungrounded. And so my root chakra and my second chakra was a hot mess. And so it's just so interesting because our bodies really, you know, it's talking to us all the time. And I think I see this with women a lot where I don't know what it is, where we either feel like we have to apologize for being like, or I know this sounds so weird, but XYZ, or I know like I'm sorry. And it's like, we're so in tune with it. And I think that's something that a lot of women struggle with is finding their voice with that. So what are some ways that like women can maybe just start to listen to symptoms more or be more in tune with their body or just even just like checking in with themselves? Are there any practices that people or rituals or things that you have found helpful for people kind of over the years to sort of like let them tune in?
This is kind of an indirect exercise, but I think journaling helps exercise your throat chakra in a way where you're expressing yourself, right? So
Yeah.
you're able to jot down some of your inner thoughts and actually work through some of your thoughts and some of the issues that you're having and that you might be struggling with so that it becomes clear. So when you're ready to communicate, whatever it might be with whoever you're supposed to have this conversation with, it makes it a lot easier. So I think journaling is a really great tool for patients that struggle. And sometimes we're not even aware of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even realize that we're not speaking our truth because, you just get into like patterns of communication with certain people in your life. So I think just really kind of checking in with yourself every so often, like, and sitting with it, like how am I feeling? Like, am I feeling heard? Am I feeling like I'm speaking my truth, or am I constantly trying to tell people what they want to hear? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm so worried about not being liked or accepted or hurting someone's feelings, right?
Mm.
But I think there's so many beautiful ways of communicating your truth, and when it comes from a place of love, it's always received well.
Yeah.
So I think journaling is really useful. And singing, I think, is a great way to exercise your throat chakra, whether it's singing in the shower. It doesn't matter if you have like a gorgeous voice or a off-tune voice. I think it's still a really good way to practice opening up your throat chakra.
Absolutely.
So those would be my tips
I love it.
for throat chakra balancing.
I love it. So I know you talked a little bit in the beginning about, you had some herbal formulas for immune health. And I feel like it would be remiss to not bring up the conversation of immunity right now in regards to, we know that when we're stressed out, that our immune system definitely takes a hit, and it's not about totally avoiding germs or totally avoiding stress, right? But it's about supporting your, immune system. So if you were building kind of an herbal first aid kit for, what's going on right now in the world with immune stuff, what would be maybe some herbal things you would
Right.
put in there, and then maybe some lifestyle or other just, Dr. Tina approved things that would be in your herbal first aid kit?
Yeah, well, I definitely would say vitamin D is
Mm-hmm.
key. Making sure, well, having your vitamin D levels tested just to make sure that it's at an optimal range. And again, the range is very broad. It's like 30 to 100. So just
Mm-hmm.
because you're 35 out of that range doesn't mean you're at an optimal level. So I usually tell my patients, whether they're trying to conceive or not, like you really want to be at least in the 50s. So it seems like for most patients, around 4 to 5,000 IUs.
Yeah.
If they're in the low normal air range, tends to be a good sweet spot. But if you are really low in vitamin D, you might have to take 10,000 IUs for a period of time and
Yes.
retest after like a month and see, how your D levels are doing. I prefer liquid vitamin D personally, the concentrated form where one drop is 1,000 IUs.
Yeah.
Our formula immune defense that I had mentioned earlier, that actually is a formula based on a classic formula called Schaufensan, which means wind screen powder. So this formula was classically used the season prior to flu season to prevent colds and flus. So like, for example, for us in our climate in California, you would take that formula in the fall to
Mm-hmm.
prepare for flu season, which generally is like December, January, February. And this formula actually was used during SARS-1 quite a bit to
Oh, wow.
prevent SARS-1. So, but it's a formula that has a combination of ginseng, some of the, Western herbs too, astragalus, cordyceps. It's a really, really great formula with, immune boosting herbs. So I highly recommend it to all my patients, especially right now, trying to get ahead of it. So that's part of my emergency kit. I actually had I put together this college wellness kit for my son when he took
Aw.
off to UCI, and that was definitely in there. And a couple of natural herbal antiviral and antibacterial formulas. One formula I like, it's called Herbal ENT
Mm-hmm.
by Evergreen Herbs. And then they also have an Herbal ABX too.
Love it.
Those are our go-to formulas. Like my kids already know, as soon as they start getting a sore throat, they're like, where's that Herbal ENT?
Yeah.
And they'll take it right away. And it usually will knock it out pretty
Yep.
quickly within the first day or so.
What are your thoughts on yin
I
chow?
think those are probably, oh gosh, Yin Chow is classic.
Okay.
Yin Chow is sort of
It's Team
like the
Dr. Tina
Tylenol of
approved.
the Chinese community. I do approve it. I will tell you though, Yin Chow is not always strong enough.
Okay.
So Yin Chow is a formula that's meant to be taken at the very, very first sign of a cold. So you
Yeah.
have to first be really in tune with your body and
Yeah.
know ooh, I'm starting to get a little tickle in my throat or I'm a little sore.
Yeah.
And so then you would take the Yin Chow. Yin Chow is considered a formula that's more for wind heat.
Mm-hmm.
So in Chinese medicine, wind heat is the type of cold that occurs in warmer climates. So wind heat is very common in California, for
Mm-hmm.
example, Arizona, like hotter states, Las Vegas, Nevada. However, on the East Coast, Yin Chow is probably not as ideal because you
Interesting.
guys have more wind cold than wind heat. So if I was to choose a classic formula for the East Coast, it would probably be more like guizitang. So guizitang, the chief herb in guizitang is actually cinnamon. So
Oh, wow.
cinnamon is more of a warming herb, right? So that makes sense for colder climates. But a formula like Herbal ENT and Herbal ABX is much stronger than Yin
Wow.
Chow and Guizitang. So if we're not messing around, we just want to knock a cold out, that's usually what we'll prescribe is Herbal ENT or Herbal ABX.
I love it.
Hopefully that answered your question. But if you only have Yin Chow around, take it.
Yeah.
It's a great formula and it's really good for kids. It's
Yeah.
a really good formula for kids.
I love that you
Safe
brought
to
that up
take.
though, because people do forget that there's not one herbal protocol for everybody. And, obviously you can go into constitutional types or, whatever, go down each of those paths. But it is really important to understand, how does my body actually break down when I'm not feeling well? And to your point, even what is the climate that I'm in, like quite literally, right? And geographically. And that depending on where you are in kind of the wellness cascade, that every herbal formula, like it can be great and have all the best, ingredients and herbs and botanicals, but it's not going to always be for you at that time. So, I think it is really important to understand like that. So, for somebody who doesn't know anything about them, those kinds of individual protocols and whatnot, I know you have some online learning, or how would people maybe, is there any references or books or things that you would suggest to maybe learn a bit more about that?
There's actually, well, the textbooks, of course, that we've learned from classically in acupuncture school, like Bensky. There's a herbal pharmacopoeia
Oh, yeah.
that's out there. That's really great. Then there's actually single herbs, and then there's actual a book on formulas too, the classic formulas. If anybody wants to take a deeper dive into Chinese medicine, those are really good reads, and they talk a lot about some of the classic conditions that were treated to in China.
Hmm.
So as a Chinese medicine doctor, you kind of have to look at a formula in the modern day and
Hmm.
go, okay, we don't have those issues anymore, but how is it going to be applied now? Some of the symptoms can be similar, even though the actual condition might be different. So, but like what you were saying earlier, Rand, I think some of the formulas may not work for patients because of their constitution. So somebody that has spleen qi deficiency with dampness
Yeah.
and has lots of digestion issues, they're most likely going to have more phlegm and dampness in their lungs. So for them, they generally, when they get sick, it goes right into the lungs.
Yeah.
So those patients, you want to choose a formula that addresses that phlegm, dampness, and lung qi, right? So
Yeah.
not only are you looking at the herbal antibiotics or the herbal antiviral herbs, you got to look at all that other stuff too.
Yeah.
If a patient has more heat in their body, then you got to clear heat, right? So it just depends. But you're absolutely right. Like a constitution can determine whether or not a formula is going to work for you.
Yeah. And I think
So,
understanding herbal
but there are just some
energetics is,
standard.
yeah, no, totally. And I think understanding herbal energetics is not something that a lot of people would even think about. You go into a Whole Foods, or even if you go into like a cool, mom and pop health shop, like most people don't, understand that. So it's always, every time you think you learn something, there's five other things to learn. But I think, again, that's why I'm always like, go talk to somebody, like go see an acupuncturist or an herbalist or somebody who kind of, studies this. And it's one thing to read a textbook and then actually have, I think, clinical practice, which, like you've been doing this for over 20 years. So I think that's, like I said, I've learned so much from you over the years that I think it really like kind of kickstarted things for me. So I'm super grateful for it and happy to have you on the podcast for that. So before I let you go, and people, you can tell everybody where they can find you and follow you, and you drop great knowledge all the time too. If you could give yourself, your younger self, one piece of health advice, and that could be as simple as always have this herb with you, or stop doing this, or whatever it is. What's something maybe that maybe something you tell your kids or your patients a lot, or just, one piece of advice to kind of leave the listeners when they're still working on building their own health, arsenal?
Gosh, that's a really great question. I would say that my advice to younger Tina
Mm-hmm.
would be start a self-care practice right away.
I love that.
Really like don't take yourself for granted
Yeah.
and start taking care of yourself early on, and really incorporating yoga, meditation, as soon as you can. And, really looking at what are the things that might throw me off balance and what are some of the tools that tend to keep me in balance, and just
Wow.
kind of having that awareness. Because, when we're in our 20s, we tend to just push through everything. We're like warriors.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
at that point, we're just, right? We're like, we're unstoppable. But at some point, that unstoppable mentality definitely has some repercussions. So I would say to those of you that have youth on your side, definitely incorporate a self-care practice immediately, whether it's like massage once a month,
Yeah.
acupuncture and cupping once a month. you know take care of yourself
Yeah.
and don't burn out your adrenals,
Don't
because
burn out.
that's
Show those
easy to do.
adrenals some love. I actually love
Yes,
that you
take good care of your
said,
adrenals.
yeah, take care. I always joke and say, like, your adrenals aren't fatigued. You are as a person. So, like, maybe let's relax a
Mhm.
little bit, But I love that you said figuring
Yeah.
out what throws you out of balance, because I think that's a really nice reframe, because it's easy to say sometimes, especially when we're maybe in a more mentally secure, stable place to be like, yeah, you should, practice gratitude and, drink green juice, right? All the things that like we love and whatever. But it's like, but what got me out of this in the first place? And how much did I actually contribute to
Right.
that when my body was like waving all these red flags and you're like, nah, I'll deal with that later.
Right.
So I love that
Right.
you said it and reframed it that way. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and your body is like a miracle. We all have an innate self-healing mechanism within ourselves, and our body signals us when it's out of balance.
Yeah.
We just need to pay attention,
This is
right? I mean,
why
oftentimes we ignore ourselves.
Yeah, we do. And this is why people should go and work with an amazing acupuncturist. Like, if anybody is lucky enough to be in California, I would sit in traffic on a Thursday on the 405 to go see Dr. Tina Yang. Like,
No.
that is like literally, if you are in California and in driving distance, definitely go check her out. But so before we go, can you just please tell people where they can follow you, website, social media stuff, if there's ways that people can work with you from distance, just kind of drop all things Dr. Tina Yang.
Yes, actually, I would be happy to do that. Now with the world of telehealth, there are so many more opportunities to work together. So I'm really excited about being able to help more people, besides just everyone in Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
So I think telehealth is really a great option. We've really launched quite a telehealth practice, even for just like herbal consultations,
Love it.
functional medicine assessments. So we can do a lot actually online. And a lot of folks already have acupuncturists, and
Mm-hmm.
through my association, the American Board of Reproductive Medicine, I have a really vast network of acupuncturists that I can refer patients to. But oftentimes, I will be sent patients from out of state primarily for herbal medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of acupuncturists really just want to focus on acupuncture, which
Mm-hmm.
is great. But Chinese medicine was always my love.
Yeah.
So acupuncture is great too. I love it. But I definitely at heart am a Chinese medicine doctor.
Yeah.
So I'm always happy to help anybody if they're looking to either customize a formula specifically for them or something that's going on for them. If it's for fertility, absolutely. I've created a lot of formulas that are commonly used for PCOS, for diminished ovarian reserve, to help lower FSH, to improve egg quality. But I can also customize formulas specifically for an individual too.
Love that.
So yeah. So what else can I tell
Is
you?
there a
So
website
our
or Instagram where people can follow
yeah.
you?
So my Instagram is Tina Yang _ acufertility doctor. And my clinic's Instagram is coastal _ ACU.
Awesome.
And then our herbal company is Awakened Health Inc.
Yes. And
So
I'll
if
put
you
that
want
all
to
in the
check out
show
any of our
notes.
formulas, yes, perfect. Yeah. awakenedhealthinc.com. If you want to learn more about herbs, we have descriptions of all of the formulas too.
Yes.
So
Well,
yeah,
thank
so
you
I'm
so much
excited.
for being on the pod. I mean, I definitely want to have you back because I think there's so many other, I would love to talk about postpartum, PCOS, some of the not so sexy topics
Oh,
that are
yeah.
misunderstood. So I would hope that you come back. And
I would love that.
I'm so thankful and grateful for your time. And you are like literally one of the most amazing people I know. And I hope to, when next time I'm in California, I'm going to come and see you.
Yes, please come visit me, Brianna. I
I
would love, love,
will.
love to connect with
All
you in
right.
person.
Yes. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your
Thank you.
night. Thank you. Ciao.
You too. Thank you so much for
Ciao.
having me on your show.